Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, you'll learn about AWS services. Today I'm going to talk about some scenarios or some use cases when you want to use custom CSV Glue classifier. And I'm making this video because I got a couple of questions from my audience and also from my customers where they find some challenges when trying to catalog a CSV file. And I thought and when I look into like documentation about it, I could not find a very clear documentation about solving such problems. So I thought, why not make a video, because then it could be useful for certain people in when they come across this kind of problem. So let's get started. So I assume that you know what is Glue crawler and classifier. If not, I will recommend you use some of the online resources to learn about it. And if you want to use my tutorial, then I'm going to provide you a link in the description box which you can use to then learn about Glue crawler and classifier. But basically, what happens is that if you're trying to catalog your data in your data platform, you use Glue crawler. Your data could be stored into an S3 bucket, it could be in a relational database table, or it could be in a Redshift, or even in a NoSQL database. But then you use Glue crawler to catalog such data. And you do cataloging of data because you want to make your data discoverable and searchable in your data platform. So how exactly crawler will catalog the data? So suppose you give a CSV file in your S3 bucket, or a JSON file in S3 bucket, or XML file, or if your data source is a DynamoDB table, or it is a relational database table, or Redshift. How would crawler come to know the schema of it, the catalog details of it? And crawler comes to know about catalog details or schema details using Glue classifier. So there are many out-of-box Glue classifiers available, which crawler can choose based on which is the most appropriate. In fact, it can use more than one classifier to classify the data and see which one is giving me the best result, and then catalog the data. So bottom line is that if crawler has to catalog the data, it needs to identify the schema of the data, and for that it uses classifier. So classifier you can say, works like a parser for crawler, which helps crawler to catalog the data in the data platform. So that's a summary about what crawler and classifier is. So let's talk about what exact problem you come across when you're trying to catalog CSV data. So suppose you have a CSV data in S3 bucket, and let's take this example: first name, last name. It's a very simple table. So sometimes your all columns are string types. So every column is a string type. It's very easy to come across this kind of challenge where where all the columns are string type. And when you try to crawl this data using out-of-box classifier available in the crawler, then it will catalog something like this. So crawler will not able to identify that, hey, my first line is first name and is header, and then I have a data. It assumes by default that even the first line is data. So since it is string type, every column is a string type, so it assumes, like in this example, that first name, last name is also data. It does not consider that as a header, so it will generate a schema where it will give column names as column 0 and column 1. And when you try to query data through this schema, you will see that it will show you first name and last name as the record. So basically, this type of problem you will see only if all the data types are string type, and you will find that crawler out-of-box CSV classifier will treat even the first line, which is the header, as a data, as a record in the data source. So that's one challenge you will come across. The other challenge you will come across when you have no header. So you get a file, but you have no header. So for instance, you can see here I have got a mix of data where I've got first name, last name, and age. So I have string, and a number. but I don't have any header in this case. And if I try to run a crawler, well, crawler says, okay, fair enough, I don't see I have any header here. And in that case, it will again create a catalog where it will simply generate columns name as column 0, column 1, column 2, depending on how many columns you have. And then it will select the appropriate data type. Like you can see here, it's selecting string, string, and big integer. So these are the two scenarios where you will realize that when I'm trying to catalog a CSV file, basically I'm not able to generate the proper column name. And in that case, and which you might want to avoid, and you want to, like in first case, you want your crawler to identify that first row is actually a header, it's not a data. And the second scenario, you might want to generate a proper column name, not call 0, call 1, or call 2. Well, one way to fix problem is that you put the header name in the beginning, as a first row, and I will always recommend to use that as a method. But if that is not possible, then let's talk what you can do. So what is the solution? So the solution is that you can use, so you see that in both of the earlier scenarios, the out-of-box CSV classifier working with crawler is not able to give you the desired result. So obviously the requirement is to go and create a custom classifier. And in Glue, you can create 4 types of custom classifier. You can create a grok classifier, an XML, a JSON, and also CSV classifier. Here in today's video, we are focusing on CSV classifier, but as I mentioned earlier, that I created some other videos, and I'm going to provide you a link about those videos in the description, where you can learn about using other classifiers as well. But let's for now stick to the CSV classifier and to the problem which we have in hand. So moving on, how exactly now your custom classifier works? The way it works is that when you configure your crawler, configuring a classifier for the crawler is an optional task, is an optional configuration. But in this case, you want to configure a custom classifier for your crawler. So the solution is that you create a custom CSV classifier first, and then you configure that with your crawler. And when you do that, your crawler will start cataloging the data in the desired way. So how exactly do we configure these custom classifier for the two scenarios? So let's take it one by one. So if you come across a scenario where all columns are string type and your out-of-box classifier is not able to recognize the first line item as a header, then in that case you can create a custom classifier. And you can see over here in this example, let me bring my mouse here. So yeah, so you can see here that in the classifier, custom classifier setting, I'm saying this is a CSV file. And then I provide my delimiter information, and after that you go to the column heading section and say, hey, this file has a heading. So when you say this file has a heading, then in this case basically you are telling the custom classifier that this file has actually a heading line on the top, and please use the first line as the header, not as a data or the record. So that's exactly what you need to do. And then if you configure custom classifier like this, it's going to work in a desired way. In the second scenario, where you don't have any header, basically what you can do is that again you create a custom classifier. As you can see in this example over here, we are configuring a CSV classifier, and then you provide your delimiter information, and then you say, well, in this case also file has a heading, but here is the heading name. So you can say first name, last name, age is my heading name. So in this case, actually, you can, like in this case where you don't have any header information available, in that case, you can actually provide a header information in your custom classifier. Well, this is something you can do, but I will always recommend that if you are getting a CSV file, try to bring it with header information on the top, okay? because I mean that's the best way to classify a CSV file. But if by any chance you don't have control over a data and you still want to generate a meaningful column name, then I will suggest then go for this method where you can provide the header names in your custom classifier file. Okay. So, having defined these classifiers, how do I add my classifier, a custom classifier to crawler? It's pretty straightforward. As I mentioned earlier, that when you're defining your crawler, basically there is a section where you can define your classifier. This is an optional section. If you do nothing over here, crawler is going to use an appropriate classifier by its own. But if you want, you can mention your custom classifier over here. Okay, so you can and I'm going to show a demo about all these things, so you will see that in action as well. So time for a demo. What we are going to do, we are going to take up both of the scenario we saw earlier, and we are going to create a custom classifier, then make it work with a crawler, and that will give us a catalog, and that should solve our problem. So let's see and let's get started. So here we are in AWS Management Console. Before I go do anything over here, let me quickly show you the data files. So if I open my data files, so I have one called context.csv file where you can see here all the columns are string, but my first row is actually a header. And then the second one is customer.csv file where I have only records, I don't have any header. So these are the two files like I showed you in my presentation, I'm going to use in my demo as well. So if I go to AWS Management Console, in S3 bucket, I created a Dojo dataset bucket where I created two folders, contacts and the customers. And then in the contacts folders, I put my contacts.csv file, and in the customers folders, I put my customers.csv file. So both are looking great. If I go to my Glue catalog, I have created two crawlers already. One is contact crawler and second is customers crawler. And in using these two crawlers, basically I created two tables already. You can see here crawling both of these locations. And if I look at my contacts catalog, as I told earlier, that since I'm using out-of-box classifier with like my crawler does not have any custom classifier configured using out-of-box, so you can see here it has generated column 0 and column 1. And if I similarly go to customers, it has also generated column 0, 1 and 2. So we are at our problem statement. So let's try to fix this problem. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to destroy everything first. So first we destroy, then we create. So I'm going to delete both of my crawlers. Okay, oops. Okay, fair enough. Then I go to my tables and delete both of my tables. Okay, and my tables are gone. If I refresh it, gone, crawlers gone. Hopefully, yes, gone. Okay, so now my crawlers and tables are gone. I kept my database still there. So what I'm going to do is that first I'm going to create two classifiers. So first I create a classifier. Let's remove this message here so I get more space. And let's call it contacts classifier. And in this case, I go to this is CSV classifier, so I keep my delimiters same, and then in this case I simply say it has a heading. So you remember my context file, if I look at my context files, my context file has first record as header. So I simply want to tell this classifier that it has a heading, but I don't want to provide any heading name over here. And I simply create it. So that created my contacts classifier, which says it has heading. Okay, fair enough. Now, if I create another classifier and call it, say, customers classifier. Okay, and then this is also CSV. In this case also, I keep my delimiters intact because it's the same as what I have in my file. I go to has heading, and then I say this is my first name, comma, oops, last name, comma, age. So, oops, comma. Yeah, here we go. So you can see here that I'm using first name, last name. So I'm saying I have a heading, but I'm providing my heading name over here. So if I go back to file again, this is the second scenario where I have only data, not the heading. So in this case, I'm saying, okay, I'm mentioning the heading name as a part of the classifier. I simply create it. So now both of my classifiers are ready. Just to check it, yeah, it looks good. Has heading and then first name, last name, and age. So now let me create crawlers again. So let me create first crawler, and this is called contacts crawler. And if I move next, I want to add my data source. And if I go to browse, go to Dozo dataset, contacts, choose add data sys, and then so I selected contacts. Then go to classifier. So this optional section, I go over here and I select from here my contacts classifier. So contacts and context classifier, and then I simply say next. Say which IAM role you want to use. I will simply use my one created IAM role, which database, it is DojoDB, and then I say next. Let me quickly review. So it's saying contact crawler for contacts data using contact classifier. Sounds good to me. Let's create the crawler. Okay, so now my contacts crawler is created. Refresh it. And now let's create customers crawler. So if I go to my customers, go to crawler and create a customers crawler. Again, simply go next, add data source, browse, go to Dozo dataset, and in this case, I'm interested in customers data, and first add the data source, then go to custom classifier, and in this case, I choose a customers classifier, and then I say next. Oops, next. Select my Dozo Glue role. Next, database is DojoDB. Next, one last time verification, customer crawler for my customer data using customer crawler classifier. So it looks good to me. Let me create that. So both of my classifiers are now, both of my crawlers are ready, as well as classifier. Now I can select both of these crawlers and I can run it. And let's wait. So this crawler will now classify my data again, create my tables again, but now using custom classifiers. So let's wait when this crawler has finished running. And when it has finished running, I'm going to show you the new schema generated by the crawler. So let's wait. Okay, so you can see here that my crawlers have finished the crawling because they have created two tables. They are still stopping, but it's fine. I mean, my data should be ready now, hopefully. And now my crawling is complete. So what I can do, I can go to my tables in my data catalog. Just refresh it once. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So now if I click on contacts, and if I look at the schema, there we go. I don't have column 0 and column 1 anymore. I have first name and last name. So it's picking the first row as a header in this case. And if I go to my customers, you can see here that I've got first name, last name, and age. So it has selected the header name from my classifier classifier configuration. So you saw the demo how in those two scenarios you can use custom classifier to classify your data in your desired way. That is all I wanted to show you today. I hope you like the video, and if you like, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. I promise to come back again in a week's time with another such video. In the meantime, please stay safe and have a nice day. Bye bye.